Well, Alan, it's great to see you up here at Bristol City's High Performance Centre. A good deal different to your days when it was the training ground, and the facilities slightly different too.
It's amazing for me to see it. I mean, I came from Chelsea in 1951, I signed on, where you had a dog track running down the field, and you either ran on the dog track or you ran around the outside of the field. And we never played on the pitch or got near the pitch. We had moved away to play on different areas or run around Battersea Park. They're all names that I remember now. And no, coming back to Bristol City, whoever's put this together is fantastic. There's everything. I mean, the physios, there's a strong physio support, there's educational support, there's, I suppose, psychological support somewhere. It's all a matter of helping the player perform well, and hopefully they do for Bristol City.
How much would you have liked to have worked with facilities like this?
Well, it take a lot of catching up with what it is, how it works. But if you've got the professionals in each area of the progress that's made with different things you're doing within the club, then if they're the professionals, you don't need to worry about it. I mean, they will look after it and put it right.
Yeah, you still need the right quality of players. One of the things you saw was the Alan Dix classroom with your own name on it. How special is that?
Well, it's very nice standing next to Johnny Addio's room, I think. I can't remember what it was now. But yeah, it's interesting and really surprised, really. I mean, mind you, education-wise, I did shorthand bookkeeping and typing at school, commercial subjects. And why I did that, this is a funny little story, this. My best friend Brian Trod was talking, and he was 2 years older than me. And he said, I tell you what, Alan, you want to get into accountancy? I said, what do you mean? He says, well, I'm a nut broker. I said, pardon? He says, no, I'm a nut broker. Coffee beans, things like that. Oh, I said, he says, there's a lot of money in that game, he said. I said, oh, okay, so I took accountancy at school, didn't I? Instead of doing woodwork, electrical things. It turned out okay, but...
We'll gloss over your playing career if you don't mind, because we want to talk about Bristol City, but just briefly, Chelsea was your first club, obviously, and you just mentioned about the pitches and things like that. Presumably, as a player, the pitches you played on and the pitch you've seen today, which is Bristol City's training ground, not let alone the main pitch, totally different, aren't they?
Fantastic. I mean, you can't complain about the field. You're not slipping and sliding all over the place. And the lovely story, we were playing a game and Ted Drake was talking about to a couple of the centre forwards, and he said, cross that ball. And he crossed it. And he dived and he fell. And the mud, he looked so... we couldn't stop laughing, all of us. But, if you did fall over, you could be in a wet patch.
So let's move on quickly to the management career. And you'd been at Coventry City as assistant manager to the one and only Jimmy Hill. What did you learn from Jimmy?
Well, first thing was, he said, because he's very much into the media side, and he did a lot of it, and as you know, he finished up on the television and doing very good production on that. And he said, just remember, whatever you say in print, you want to read it before you say it. Just think about what will that look like, if you've got time, that is, of course.
And how about dealing with players? What did he show you?
Well, when we travelled around, I watched John Galley, and that's how I bought him for Bristol City. Bobby Kellard I played with at Southend. He was a young player. So the first two I bought, Ken Wimsers was another one I bought early, but again I saw him play, very smooth passer of a ball. Not a physical player as such, but a good passer of the ball, kept you playing from midfield and connected the front to the back very well. So, and Coventry was, what's the word I'm looking for? Where it progressed because Jimmy bought players that excited the crowd. It was good.
And you bought players that excited the crowd. The first of them, John Galley, and well, I remember very well, who could head the ball almost as hard as some people could kick it, as far as I can remember. But great story about when you signed John. It didn't go down too well with the board because he was injured at the time.
Yeah, well, I'd been seeing him play at Coventry, so I didn't need to really see him. So I rang Tommy Doherty and I said, Tom, did you sell John Galley? He said, yeah. He said, 22,000, we'd take it. So I said, so let me go and speak to the directors and I'll come back. So I came back. Yeah, we got the 22. He says, no, the director says 25 now. I said, pardon? So a few words I said and then left. And then I came back and he says, 27 and a half now. I went, I can't say the words on here that I used, but I just said, you're lying. So at the end, we got him for 25.
And with his leg in plaster.
Well, that, of course, a bit, yeah. So when I took it to the board meeting on the morning, it was on a Tuesday, and they said, okay, and then and said, how's John Galley then? Is he playing? I said, no, he can't. His leg's in plaster. And the silence was unbelievable. And I got up to walk out because it was right at the last moment. And he brought up so-and-so cripple. I said, well, it's the right treatment for Achilles tendon, probably. You've got to keep it quiet inside and come through that way. Anyway, he came back against, I think it was Huddersfield, and he scored a hat-trick. So all bad was left now, it was all good. And he scored a lot of goals for us.
Your first job was to keep City in the second division, because they were struggling when you arrived, and struggling for quite a few seasons after you arrived. What do you remember of the early days?
Well, it was trying to use all the players we got and find out who did what. That's the first thing all the managers do when you come in. You can listen to all the coaches who are there and been permanently there, but at the end of the day, your judgment is what counts. So you're looking at different players, and I let some go. Played Chris Crow.
Yeah.
So we're now doing the contracts. So he comes in, and I did the contracts as well. So comes in, I said, yeah, well, you've got to be much more involved. Could you help the juniors? Put his hand up. He said, I've not come to talk about football. I've come to talk about money. I said, what do you mean? He said, I think you should give me a rise. I said, no, I'm going to take some off. And he left the office. So 5 minutes later, Bert Bush rang from the other room saying, you can't do that. I said, I know, I just wanted a few minutes to sort things out a bit. So he came in and said, well, I think it's best you look for a club, I thought, let's start afresh. And it wasn't bad. Everyone can ask for more money, it's no problem. But I thought, well, let's start clearing out and go from there.
And what you did have pretty soon was a strike partnership of Galley and Chris Garland. And Chris was like the young golden boy of Bristol football. Was it true that when you sold him, that virtually financed the Dolman stand? He was Bristol's first £100,000 football export, and the £100,000, it was said maybe at the time, went a long way towards building the Dolman stand?
I didn't have an inroad into what the directors did when I wasn't in the room, because I was generally called in after the board meetings had started and walked out when my 10 or 15 minutes was heard by the board. So I didn't know, but I would say it could have helped a long way to get to the... Another one was Peter Spiring, we sold to Liverpool for 50,000. That was another. So you were talking about 150 by then. Did it get involved in the training ground? And in fairness, when I asked for not much to get players in, I was allowed to get one or two.
The chairman was Harry Dolman, who brought you to the club. And I know you've told me before a great story about Harry working out figures on a cigarette packet. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think Marina agreed with me. I was talking to her one day and I said that. She said, I know, he does that, did it a lot. But yeah, he was, you can understand, having committed the club to the new, and that's been a great asset to the club. And with what Steve Lansdowne's done, it's been brilliant. I mean, the work he's put in at the ground has been perfect. And this place also proves what a strong owner can do. And I'm sure every club in the leagues or the country would like a setup like this. It's unbelievable, really. Didn't have any imagination it was like this.
Yeah. I know you told me you saw Harry Dolman write down the Chris Garland fee and trying to work out how much that would pay off the Dolman stand, all on his cigarette packet, which of the time. How did you find Harry to work with?
All right, because I was aware of what could happen, which is you get the sack if you're not doing the job properly. And I'd bought players and they'd improved the side. You know, we went up the Bobby Kellard, John Galley, Ken Wimshurst, and we were moving along. And taking people like, but Jerry Sharp already played inside. What a good player he was. Ron Greenwood said to me at the International for Tony Collins, I didn't know that Chris Garland he'd come to see, that's what he said. And he said, but Jerry Sharp on the left wing, he scored 7 goals by, I think, December maybe. And I said, I know, he's doing well. And he worked well, and he ran the line, he caused problems. And sadly, he lost, his leg was broken by McMordy.
Middlesbrough.
So it was sad.
Yeah, I was there that day, and you could almost hear the crack, couldn't you? I think it was a horrible incident.
Well, I walked into the training ground at the end, or before the players got in, because I wanted to see Jerry Sharp. He'd not come out for the time he has taken off, and the players were coming in, and sadly, the bone had come through the back of his calf, and I saw that, and the blood was all over the table. So I said to Les, lock the room, don't let any of the players come in and see this. I said, you didn't want them to get memories of something like that. So we locked the room and didn't let anyone in. But having said that, we didn't have a specialist, and Jerry didn't see a specialist at 11 o'clock at night. So after that, I said to the board, we've got to have a specialist or a surgeon, someone who knows the business, who can get through a few doors early and get better treatment than Jerry got. So we did. So that was a good move. Unfortunately, on a sad situation, because Jerry never played a game for the club.
Yeah, lots made of how big a loss Paul Cheesley was when he got injured, but Jerry Sharp was almost an equally big loss.
Oh, he was. The ones that really, when you say Jerry Sharp, Paul Cheesley, the others I can't think of any.
They were 2 massive losses.
Yeah, they were the people that were game changers, and you can't get too many of those.
We'll briefly touch on your first cup success, which was in the League Cup in the early 1970s when you played Tottenham in the semi-finals. I remember Alan Gilzine scoring and Alan Skirton scoring for City in the first leg at Ashton Gate. I think we lost the second leg 2-0. But that was a cup run that suggested you were building something.
Well, yeah, it was relief really to start getting. We were so tight at times that we probably didn't relax enough in some of the games that we drew or lost. But we were getting there in terms of playing. Well, not playing football I do from the back, because if my idea is you've got to play football in their last third, not your last third. But other than that, you can see the game now. And I saw it then. It had to be good passing. The old Tottenham push and run game from Blanchflower and all those players that played with them in those days.
Yeah.
And that was the style I was brought up to. And Drake got us doing that as well. When we went up, I played one game at Tottenham again. We beat them 4-2 when we went up and won the first division in those days. And it was really shocked the way the game went, but we won 4-2 and went on to win the league. I only played the one game. I came out of the RAF, and that was a great relief.
So a sniff of success at Ashton Gate in the Cup, and by then you were starting to mould a team that was largely made up of Bristol boys who'd come through the Bristol boys setup, and Scots that were brought down largely as a result of Tony Collins, your assistant, doing some good work in the north. Tell us about Tony's contribution.
Tony was excellent. He was very basic in what he did. He talked to people around the areas where the player would be interested in. He'd find out from the local journalists who would, or he had a journalist in Manchester, I can't remember his name now, but he would ring up and just find out the local news about each player that we would be interested in. That was Tony doing a job very well. And then he obviously saw in the players that he saw the ability to do jobs or not do the job. And he was in an area, because he was at Rochdale, and so he was living in that area. But around Rochdale, you had so many clubs in the league, not just the first or second, but all the leagues. So I said to the director, he said, "Why did you get Tony Collins? He's not in Bristol." I said, "Well, we don't need him in Bristol. We've got Bristol covered, Cliff Morgan and a few people like that." And I said, "Let's go over the old country and pick up what we can," which we did. We got Drysdale that way. Hartlepool. He came in from Hartlepool, and you can't really put a value on it, because we got players from buying them then, which was Galley, Wimshurst, Bobby Kellard. Then you got the Bristol boys, with quite a few: Garland, Tainton, David Rogers, Spiring, who we sold. Oh, Jerry was probably Gloucestershire, I think. I'm not too sure, but they were all local boys. Merrick, of course, yeah. Collier. We got right a few. Collier goes at the back end of the time, the last 4 years of my.
But you liked signing Scots, didn't you, Alan? Because apart from the young ones that came down, Tom Ritchie, Jerry Gow, came down as really young players, you also signed Jerry Sweeney, Donny Gillis from Scottish football.
Well, I think you can see when you scout, is he quick or is he not? Is he accurate or is he not? Can he get vertical takeoff if you're in the back? Does he win vertical battles? And you're going through all the technical kind of notches that tell you what players are about. And you can only look at that as a whole. But other than that, you're looking to get character, what he's doing, and that's where the local journalists came in. Tony took it, and Tony had a lot of connections in the north, because he got to the final of the League Cup, I think it was, against Norwich, and he didn't win. I don't know if he didn't win it. They got beaten by Norwich, I think, but he'd had a period at Rochdale where he'd done very well, and. He was a very good man, but he was in the area where it all happened. And Scotland was only kind of 150 miles away or 200. For me, it was kind of 400 miles, or flying up or flying back, but it didn't fly much in those days. So you got the whole object of what the Tony Collins was, to have him in an area where football was strong. Getting into an area in Scotland, Glasgow, Edinburgh, I mean, that's about it. A line across there, you two major cities where a lot of Scotch boys are playing. And he ended up going to see Jerry Gow, Tom Ritchie. We saw his brother first, Ritchie, who played for England schoolboys. Not England, Scottish boys as full-back. And Tom's dad said to me, "By the way, Tom can play as well." So I thought, well, to get the first one, I'll sign Tom, and if Tom doesn't make it, I can let him go. So we got him down, and Tom, 6 foot something, kind of, you look like if you blew him, he'd fall over. And but he had an appetite for the game which was unbelievable. And he grew and grew and grew in strength and stature, and he became a first-team regular. There's no doubt. And then the marriage of him with Cheesley was a great bout. I'm not saying they didn't score an awful lot of goals, but they made life miserable for the back four, because they worked off one another so well.
We'll come on to them in just a moment. First, I want to talk about the 73-74 season and the cup run that took you to play Liverpool in the quarter-finals. And of course, the most famous game of that was playing Leeds in the 5th round. And 1-1 draw at Ashton Gate, which was brilliant in itself, because Leeds were unbeaten in the what's now the Premier League at the time. And so we all thought, wonderful performance, but now that's it. And you go to Ellen Road the following Tuesday, and it was an afternoon game because of the 3-day week and power cuts. 40,000 people at Ellen Road. Donny Gillies scores the winner, and you've beaten the team that was one of the best in the world. Tell us about that.
Well, first, I rang Don Revie after the game at Bristol, and I said, do you think we can have a few extra tickets? Because I'm sure it's going to be a deluge coming up from Bristol. Yeah, don't worry about that, Alan, don't worry about that. So we now get to Leeds, don't we? And I still haven't got a ticket. Not me, tickets for other people. So I walked in and the player says, you got any tickets, boss? I said, I'll just go and get them. Got into Don's office. I said, Don, the tickets. He said, Alan, I haven't got any. I said, what? He said, I'll tell you what, bring all the people, the players' friends, we'll take them down the front and push them in from the front to stand up on the front of the terraces, which we got away with. But, you know, I'm sure somehow the tickets weren't left for us on purpose. I don't know what it was to upset us a bit or what. But anyway, the game starts and it was like Custer's last stand, you know. We were not getting outside our box and talk about playing in the box. We were playing in their box, but we weren't up there. And we were hooping it away. But I'd said to Norman Hunt, not Norman Hunt, played on the left wing, the little Hunt, what's his name?
Ernie Hunt.
Pardon?
Ernie Hunt.
Ernie Hunt, that's what I'm trying to say. Well done. Ernie Hunt, I said, look, all you got to think of is stopping Reaney, the fullback, the right back, going forward. How you do it is up to you. So he said, okay. And he did. He hit him early on, and then he ran off him, and then he dropped back very quickly to make sure he got the space he wanted to get into. So that was a plus factor. Then we had Don Gillis was playing up front and could chase and work. And he wasn't the most brilliant player. He was honest at that, and he worked at it, and the ball was played by Keith Thier, I think. Keith Thier had gone down the right, played one across, and he allowed it to run behind him, and he turned and chased it 5 or 6 yards. And as he's going away from goal, he's turned and hit it back across the keeper line, and it seemed forever to be going towards the goal. And it finally got into the net, didn't it? And of course, from then on, Leeds, I mean, we were hammered by Leeds, in fairness. And in fairness, the boys stood up to it. And it was a great character-building situation when you come away and you say, how did you get on? And you say, oh, we beat them 1-0. And in the press, it's all front page.
Well, I was going to say, it wasn't back page news, it was front page news. I can remember Donny's picture being on the front page, I think the Daily Mirror, certainly. That's how surprising the result was. Now, there was also a story that after the draw had already been made for the next round, and there was a story that Bill Shankly, the great Liverpool manager, had said what a great game Liverpool and Leeds was going to be in the next round before your replay, and in the end he ended up apologising to you, is that right?
Well, he came in the dressing room and I was surprised. The boys had all stood up. And he was going around shaking everyone's hands. And I thought, he's getting the size of every player, so he knows he doesn't know them at all. So I said, okay, Bill, do you want a cup of tea? And I grabbed him. I said, before he got halfway around, I pulled him right out of the way and got him out the door. I said, well, I'll see you later, and thanks. But
he apologised to you for making that remark.
Yeah, well, yes. Whatever's said in football sometimes has got a double edge to it, so you have to learn to live with that. Yeah. You know, can't stand Alan Dix. Hello, Alan, how are you? All right? And then you get on, no problem.
We're talking only a couple of years later, April the 20th, 1976. Any Bristol City fan who was around at the time will always remember that date. Portsmouth at home, the chance to go into the First Division for the first time in 65 years for the club. And Clive Whitehead scores early on, but after that it was a bit of a struggle. What do you remember of that night?
Well, it was a nervous struggle, really. I mean, everyone realised that if we won, we go up. So you can imagine the pressure on the players thinking, oh, I've got to play today. And we did. We got that early goal, good strike, and then we were more aware of getting back and playing tight than we were of playing forward again. Because you know, you don't score goals if you defend every time. Very rarely, anyway. You might score one like the goalkeeper did for us, many years ago. And you got to look at it and say, okay, it was a job well done because we never gave a goal away, but the nervousness within the air, the feeling for everybody, I think even the crowd were nervous as well. You mustn't let a goal in, and we didn't. And that brought the history factor that we got back into First Division. I don't know if it was after 100 years then, I don't know if it was.
It was 65, I think.
65,
And if you think about it now, it's 43 now since Bristol City played in the First Division as well, or now the Premier League. So it's building up as almost as long a time, but we won't go into that. We will go into the team from that season, which everybody will engrave of the Cheesley-Ritchie strike partnership, Jerry Gow, midfield Jeff Merrick, inspirational captain Ray Cashley, who had a wonderful season in goal. What did you feel was special about that team?
Well, the spirit they built up between themselves, we were, how do you build it? I mean, all these facilities, will that help the spirit? It will help the player develop, there's no doubt about it. Or rephrase that, it will help some players who are interested. Other players, like at school, there's some that enjoy it, some it's very hard work to take all the information in.
I remember on the promotion evening, you went up into the stand afterwards with the players, and there was countless people on the pitch. You took a microphone, and I think I remember you saying it was the best night of your life, or words to that effect. Is that how you felt?
Well, the answer is yes. I've worked with Coventry, and we did all that, third to second, second to first, and I left, and then I'm with Bristol. An unknown quantity, really, because not many people worry about assistant managers at certain clubs. But Jimmy Hill, I think, rang the chairman and told him, Harry Dolman, that what I could do and what I couldn't do. And he took that, and it all worked out very well in the end.
Certainly, there was a night nobody will ever forget that was there. And just talking about that team again, the Cheesley-Ritchie partnership, I think they got 34 goals that season between them. Tom was top scorer, if I remember rightly, and Paul got 2 less. But together, as you said before, Cheesley's aerial ability, and Tom's running, they were a perfect partnership, weren't they?
Oh, I think the Arsenal game showed what we could do, but it showed what Cheesley was all about. He had such a good vertical jump, as he would leap. But the next step is he's looking at the ball and he power heads a lot. And so many today do the little flick they just flick at the ball. And to me, they don't attack the ball really. It's how you see the one-on-one situations to start with, and it's a tackling battle. You see the one like Jerry Gow that goes straight in for ball and man if it's in the way as well. So you just got that. Norman Hunter was the same. He was so aggressive in the moments the game were quiet. You could hear him talking to people what to do and it really shook me because he was such a good player and technically strong that he made the others work. And those 2 years with Norman, we I think ended in the top half of the First Division, or well above the bottom part. So it's all about involvement in terms of players wanting to improve, and players that just stand back and do enough to be there, and maybe not. You've got then the other players that are not good enough. So that's when you start the building of sides. When you put players into different positions. And Jerry Gow, as you said, was he good enough to do this right at the start? Was Jerry Gow
talking about the ups and downs of football, never could there have been, in such a short space of time, such an ups and downs as Paul Cheesley suffered. That game at Arsenal, I still regard in my 50-odd years watching Bristol City as the best performance I can remember. You could have beaten them 4-0, you beat them 1-0, could easily have been 4. Bearing in mind the opposition, it was a fantastic performance. 3 days later, or 3 nights later, Stoke City come to Ashton 8. Peter Shilton goes up for a ball with Cheesley, and the rest is history, I'm afraid, isn't it?
It was his Achilles tendon, and that was. These days they can put it right, but in those days it was a finisher.
Yeah, knee problems these days. I mean, as you say, there's far more different treatments around and everything, but nobody realised at the time how serious it was, to be fair, did they?
I didn't. I took him off thinking, oh, he'd be all right in a week or 10 days anyway, because that was a factor where take the swelling down, but...
Would he have played for England, do you think, Alan? He'd had the chance to play
well,
for
Don
Revie
picked him and rang me, and I said, well, Don, we got a game against Sunderland, I think it was. Can you leave him out? And so if we beat Sunderland and get away to Carlisle, I think the next game was, and we could be on going into the first division. So he said, I'll do that. And he said, I'll tell him I'll play him later on.
So he might have got an under-23 cap. Do you think he'd have been a full international given time?
Yep, I certainly do. Quick, powerful, but played with both feet. He used both feet well. And the one thing that is missing sometimes, he was very powerful in the air.
The first division days were wonderful, 4 wonderful seasons there. The first one culminating in that amazing game at Coventry. To this day, I don't know how many people think there was a bit of skullduggery going on there, especially with you and Jimmy Hill both being involved that night.
Well, it obviously looks it, and when I look back, I think, yeah, they've got grounds to say that because of the way it happened. But the Bristol public had come and just couldn't park cars. They couldn't get, and were finding it hard to get into it. And I heard the policeman say to Jimmy, "Do you mind if we stop the game for 50? Don't start the game in the next 20 minutes." And so he said, yeah, I don't mind. Alan, what do you think? I said, I don't mind. Get the crowd in. And we did that. And of course, that opened up all the doors about the possible fixing of a game. You don't fix a 2-goal lead playing away from home and coming back. We came back strongly and missed a goal. I think it was Jerry Gower. Missed a goal with the ball flying just by the back post. And then suddenly Jimmy Hill came running down the exit of the stands to get to the pitch, and run down the runway to get to the electric scoreboard. And he said, Everton, I think it was 2 or 3.
2-0, yeah.
Sunderland 1 or something like that.
2-0, yeah.
2-0. So he got down and he shouted up and everyone's going, yeah, because they all knew that crowd bit knew, oh, that's safe. So once it went up, there was big cheers all around, wasn't there?
Both teams were safe.
And both teams, well, Garland came over. It was a funny little story. And Chris was very adamant. He said, they're not passing to me. I said, no, I know, we're okay, it's okay. I said, Evans beaten Stoke. So that was, it was open to the thoughts that it would be fixed. But there was no way it was fixed. You couldn't.
And again, I was in the crowd that night and talking to the players since. 2-0 down, everyone thinks you're down and out. Jerry Gow scores, then Donny Gillies equalises. So sometimes still to go. A lot of the players say that you had the momentum then and would have gone on to win.
Yep.
And it wouldn't have been Coventry that went on to win.
Well, that is very true. I felt confident.
And that meant another season. And in fact, it meant, as it turned out, 3 more seasons. Some marquee signings, Alan. You found it very hard, I know, to replace Cheesley. But Joe Royle came. Norman Hunter, I think when he came down here, people thought Norman was a kicker. And he probably had one of the best left feet of any Bristol City player I've ever seen.
Yeah.
They were like marquee signings for you that showed Bristol City were suddenly...
Well, we had the Scotch boy too.
Peter
Cormack. So we had 3 internationals come in. Well, 4 with Cooper, who... Little story, Cooper, I had him... He lost some pace. He's really lost pace. And I brought him in my office and said, Terry, I'm sorry I'm going to leave you out because, you know, your pace is... You're not keeping up with X, Y, Z. And he said, yeah. He said, anyway, you at least speak to me. I said, what do you mean? He says, Jack Charlton doesn't speak to me. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, he leaves you out, he just puts it on the board. I said, well, that's it. So that was...
Yeah, because he was in middle.
So that was the 4th international.
Yeah. But they were name signings that, and we also should mention the trophy that you won, the Anglo-Scottish Cup. What do you remember about that? There was one or two very hot games in that. I remember one up in Scotland. I think we finished with 9 men.
Well, we finished with 9 men, and we called. I don't know what we were called. Bandits or pirates or something. I can't remember what this guy, the chairman, used up there. And it was, then we played St Mirren with the famous one of all managers in English football, Fergie, and we got, what was the word he said? Because he said, well, they should have won because they scored a goal which was disallowed or something. I said, well, sadly, the bottom line is we won. And when we used to meet, he'd always say, he says, we won that match. Because I think that's how he gets on in life with his aggressive attitude. You know, we've got to do this or we've got to do that. And that's what he wants. And I think the players that work with him are quite aware of what he was about. He was a motivator of all, because no one wins that many trophies without being able to motivate your team and get them playing as you want or a winning way. And I just admire what he did.
I think it was a draw in the end at Ashton Gate, the second leg. You didn't need to win it, and the trophy, as I say, it's not often Bristol City win a trophy of any sort. So how important was that to you?
Well, it was all about the confidence it gave the players, you know, and you can use it. You say, come on, we've won that match, let's carry it on and work at what's good. And what's good is your defending was good. We've not allowed X to make many shots on goal if you had a top scorer. It's like McDonald we had at Arsenal. He wasn't in the game hardly. And Gary Cooper was brilliant that day.
Gary Collier, yeah. Absolutely.
Not Gary Collier, sorry.
Yeah. But a lot of people forget Fergie was your opposite manager in that Anglo-Scottish Cup final. And also, I think the captain of St Mirren was Tony Fitzpatrick, wasn't it? And you later signed him.
I signed him for a lot of money, but I thought he would be the one to lift us. But sadly, his wife never liked Bristol. Why, I don't know, but... and he came into the office he said, I'm sorry, boss, but my wife is not very happy. And of course, I think I left before he went, didn't I?
Not sure. I'm
not sure. But anyway, coming back to him, that's what he wasn't. And if your wife's not happy, it's a big factor.
Yeah. That was sad because I think you paid $230,000 for it, which was a big fee for Bristol City.
Well, yeah, if you. I thought he'd be the answer, but sadly he wasn't.
And then let's move on to the Gary Collier situation, because that is something that's had great ramifications for Bristol City over the years. You've got this team that's doing well in the first division. You've got good players. Gary Collier is one of them. And if I remember you telling me before, we got a phone call from Coventry. Gary was out of contract, and the first you knew of him going there was a phone call you got from Coventry.
Well, there's a little story before that. He came into my office on that morning. Came in for his cup final ticket, because all the players had one ticket each. So he came in, and contracts didn't really. I wasn't thinking of it then. I knew I had to do them, but the system that they brought in was the freedom of contract. As you know, when the Belgian boy or a Dutch, I don't know which one it was, made the argument legally and won that he could move freely. So he came in, and as he could, I said, don't sell the ticket, because the FA have taken all the numbers and they know what Bristol City Bristol City's numbers are. So I said, no, I'm not. I was giving it to the family. I said, okay. And he walked out. And then 2 hours later, I got the call from Coventry saying, we're going to sign Gary Collier. So I said, just put him on the phone a moment. He said, no, he doesn't want to speak to you. And sadly, whatever they'd offered, I tried out for more. But I had, because it all comes down to money at some stage. And,
yeah, it was obviously a great shock to you. And your reaction was to make sure it didn't happen again, put your other top players on long contracts. Now, Clive White had 11 years, I think Tommy Ritchie 7 years, others quite long contracts as well. Obviously, it was done because, as a direct result of what happened with Gary.
Well, it was. They shook it out. 11 years for White, it was long, but it took him to 35. He was 24 at that time. And I did everything to 35. I thought, you know, that's when the football pension starts. Probably the public may not know it, but all the players get a pension when they're age of 35. I don't know if they've changed that date now, or they've taken it away. I don't know, but that's what it was. So I used that as a block where they could move. By then, you've had a good spell. If you've got someone playing to 35 for you,
So you were basically looking after the players who'd done well for you.
yeah, very much so. And what the sad thing was is what it happened to the teams in the immediate future to that. It was a breakdown of everything. And to just finish it, Jerry Gow rang me and he says, "Boss, can you get me away?" I said, "What's wrong?" He says, "I feel like a tennis net. The ball keeps going over my head and back and forwards." He said, "And all they do is play long balls, and that's it." So I said, "Would you be interested in Manchester City?" Because I knew Tony Book very well. So he said, "Yeah." So I rang him, and he's
Really? So that was what the football they were playing under your successor, which was Bob Houghton.
Yeah.
Jerry didn't feel part of it.
Well, no, he couldn't use. He said he wasn't enjoying his football at all.
Amazing. So you helped get him to Manchester City.
I did, yeah.
I'm not sure we should be doing that.
I know it's not good for Bristol City, but when you had a player who's given you as much as he had, and he's asked for a bit of help, you don't turn that boy down. That's I could bring up, and if Bookie had said not interested, I would try someone else. So it's just that. That was a team, and of course he played in the cup final, which was good for him.
Absolutely, I was there when he did. Yeah,
great
absolutely.
experience.
Yeah, wonderful memories, Alan. And we've got to finish, obviously, like all managers do, with the sack and relegation in 1980 into the second division. 8 or 9 games gone, not doing very well. What do you remember of how that came about?
Well, it was so. We'd gone down, and obviously were depressed. So you've got that reaction. The second reaction is we probably lost a little bit of drive in terms of being in a situation where we're all relegated. Everyone's spirits are low. And you're trying to get them to play. And so the first thing we want to do is win. But we could get, I don't think we got a win to, at that time, I can't remember.
I think it might have been 4 draws, something like that.
Yeah, that was 4 draws, and Cardiff beat us at home, wasn't it?
I'm not sure about that, but I think it was 4 draws in their first 8 games, something like that.
Yeah.
And obviously the board took the decision they did. But how did it get relayed to you?
Well, it got relayed saying they're going to get a guy in, and I thought, I went to. I think I was 35 when I left. 13 years. I got there at 41. So that's not too old. So I just.
Was it true they offered you a job moving upstairs, general?
Yeah,
manager?
they said you can move and do the financial side, and I said okay. I said let's meet. We'll have a contract. So the board said we'll be sitting again on Wednesday or something like that. I said okay. So then I thought I can't do that. So I got a contract signed, which had sat in my desk for a month, and I got a director to sign it. I didn't get it straight away, but at least I got my money in a year's time, and like that I got bits and pieces of it. But it gave me a financial assistance for a couple of years so I could move around. And that's why I went to the continent, because I could go. I didn't worry about the money. I had some money in the bank in England. Not great deals of money, but it worked out that way.
We should say you had a successful coaching career on the continent and in America for many years, but you're back watching Bristol City again now, and have been for a number of years, still live in Henleaze. And it's a pleasure talking to you, and wonderful memories. Thank you so much for all you did. I'm glad to know that we know each other now and are friends, and I can't thank you enough on my behalf for those wonderful nights and wonderful memories. I'm sure I speak for all Bristol City fans, so thank you very much.
Thank you.